while talking. So welcome. I'm the, oh dear, this is not going well. Okay, I am one of the founders of Facilitators Connect, a retreat specially created for facilitators, scrum masters, UX, UI designers, product managers, and I can keep going. But we're doing this retreat especially for those people to target really to position ourselves, to market ourselves, and also to put on sales to really get more clients. I can see Murray is in the car. Be careful. Murray is also joining us. Chris is also joining us. Chris is also an internal speaker, and tonight is a webinar. And he just, I'm just going to give the word to him. If you're interested in the retreat, stay tuned because I have a very special gift, So stay tuned, and here's to Chris.
Thank you very much, Catherine. I feel like we've got plenty of people coming through now, so it feels nice. I suppose I'll start with the classic screen share, just for everyone's visual benefit.
Oh, and now we have a problem, Chris, because now you have to admit people because I cannot anymore.
And also we'll get through the technical difficulties doing that. That's totally fine. I think I can do that too. Yeah, I can do both at the same time, so don't worry.
Or you can make Katrine co-host and she can still let people in, maybe? Is that possible in this format?
I don't think I have that.
This is it. So this will be the ultimate live multitasking webinar. So we'll be presenting and doing some submissions. But whilst we're getting the last few people coming through, there's a couple more just coming in now. Just for context, the style of this, I'll do a quick intro, just very short keynote. I really don't want to spend the time just kind of talking at everybody as such. We're going to actually also do some stuff in Miro, some visual work to kind of also embody the power that is Facilitators Connect. So we'll be doing some work to kind of like learn by doing rather than just me talking at everybody. And yeah, and then we'll do that with a guest of ours. And then, of course, once we finish that, I'll wrap up smoothly, hopefully, and then we'll do some Q&A at the end. So if there's Q&A questions you want to ask during the process, just feel free to just put it into the Q&A chat. That's all good. And then I'll make sure we get time at the end to run through your questions, make sure everything's answered. And yeah, hopefully everyone leaves learning some things, feeling a bit happy about life. And yeah, still some more coming in now. Let's give it one more minute.
It's only just past, so
yeah, exactly. It'd be don't want to jinx it and be too harsh on everyone, but yes. Okay, Christy's now joining. All right, it looks like we have some people from all over the world here. It seems definitely got the US covered here. Seen Christie's entered. Okay. The chat as well. Okay, who else is in here? I see Mark's here. Hi, Mark. All the big names. And okay. Well, in the interest of time, because we've got quite a bit to get through, and what I'm going to show today is kind of a process that I run with lots of clients, and these processes can take sometimes like hours to days. So what I'm trying to do today is kind of get through a snapshot of what it is to help give people a flavor as to like how to leverage their background and their skills and experiences and turn that into essentially their own business or improving their existing business, which is something I've also done myself over many years of doing this, which I'll jump to in a second. There's a couple more people coming in. Okay. For 5 minutes in, I'm going to start. So yeah, from identity to impact, how to use your background to start a business. So this is exactly what we're talking about today. And in terms of the housekeeping, yeah, it's a 1 hour session. Of course, it is recorded. As a caveat, I've been asked by a few people that can't make it to have a recording. Q&A in the boxes, like I said before, please just put your questions in as you go through. It can be big or small, no judgment, whatever question you have. If we can't get to your question for some reason, I'll make sure I take it offline with you at the end. Feel free to share, screen grab anything, share it on your LinkedIn's, whatever you want to do if you feel like it's of value, just because, it's nice to share and share the love on these kind of things. And that's it. So it's a really short housekeeping, nothing too stressful, hopefully. And what we're looking to learn on this, really just like I said before, just leveraging your past experience and how can you translate that into something that people will buy as a consultant or as a solopreneur, freelancer, anything like that. And really understanding like the benefits that you bring from your experience. Sometimes I feel people have a slight imposter syndrome, thinking I've done stuff, but I haven't quite how to sell it. And then defining your target audience, of course. If you don't know who to shoot for and how to find them, how can you sell to them efficiently and sell them the right thing? And really the main thing I see a lot from people I speak to is productizing the offer, just making it so it's really understandable and people get it first time. So we're looking at that. And then ideally what we'll try and do is look at a snapshot of how to make a process out of what you know, because I think having a process or a form of IP or something that talks about your secret sauce to do this is it's really helpful in the sales sense and in just helping people understand and build trust with you as a service provider. And then last but not least, we will look at like pricing, how to sell, just kind of like some bare bones of how to like get that going. Because I think if you're a first time person doing anything, that also can be hard to do. I'm check very quickly because I've got lots of noise coming through from people. Let's see if I can mute people. Okay, I think I was muted now. So thank you for whoever did that. So that's what we'll learn today. So yeah, a whole snapshot of stuff, but basically how to just stop selling to build a business. I think that's the most important thing, because without the sales, you have no business. So we're going to jump straight into that. As you know, we use the phrase from Dolly Parton, to know who you are, to find, what your purpose is. And I think I've had this mistake in the past, which is why I'm quite passionate about this, where I've jumped into just making companies and selling things for the sake of doing it, not really understanding what I was and what I wanted to be and how to apply that in a useful sense in a business. So yeah, so Dolly's our inspiration today. She's even got the business suit on to prove it and some insanely old computer, which I love. So yeah, and then there's me. So why am I here? Why am I qualified to talk about any of this? So I guess I like to start usually by saying like, this is what I'm not anymore, but I have done in the past. So my past has been a peppering of lots of services. So I've spent my 20s, most of my 30s doing like the work, like engineering, doing design, doing marketing for companies and agencies. So a lot of that production work. I even, for my sins, ended up being a CEO of a couple of companies in the past, agencies, even founded my own agency at the time, and started quite a few startups as well. So in terms of the concept of this, like using your experience to build companies, like I've done that quite a lot over time, some great, some not so great. So I'm really trying to distill this into like a life lesson to then share with the community and everyone on this webinar. And yeah, I've done it for like 20 years now, so it kind of shows my age. But what's important about it was what I learned was more about myself. And this is not a spiritual webinar by any stretch, but like I found by doing all those things, I really enjoyed things like problem solving, working with people, collaboration. But by doing that, I realized I could then bring together all the things I love doing and take my experience, my past experience, which is a combination of, like I said before, like design and engineering, like product stuff, and use that to kind of build innovations for people. And by doing that, I worked then on myself to become a workshop and master in the AJ and Smart community, which I'm sure most of you have heard of or part of. And then combine that together, that just led to having a successful consultancy doing innovation workshops, sprints, design workshops and sprints. And even now I'm a strategy director at a really great company called Infinum, which is a global kind of innovation and engineering powerhouse. And that all came from me just not looking at everything that I could do or used to do and just going, what do I want to be the best at? And just focus on that and just be like, hopefully in the top 1% one day of that skill set. So really that was what drove me to come to this point where we're sat with you wonderful people talking about how to build a business from your experience. So I've literally just done that from my own journey in this world. So yeah, I feel fairly qualified, but we'll see when we get through this. So yeah, the process today obviously is looking at like some key things. So obviously you at the start going, right, who's the person? what's the market they're looking to get into, because everyone's got different dreams and hopes and markets to get into. What's the process of doing that? Do they have one? What do they do to even win business and do their work? And then, you know, beyond that, can you productize that? And then most importantly, then can you sell that? So really, you know, all that together leads into a business, because I guess if you're not getting paid, it's more of a hobby. So we want to make businesses that make profit. And then again, all of this is to take away whatever you can from this. It is recorded, of course, and then just want to make sure everyone can then have some learnings. And again, we'll do Q&A at the end. So the agenda, super quick. You know, we've done the intros and warm up of sorts now. We'll jump through all these steps bit by bit. Most of these are powered by exercises that I'll drive on this in Miro, not Mural. And yeah, and at the end, we'll get it all wrapped up and talk to each other like human beings. And what I might do in between, if questions do come up, I'll try and pause at times if I can and jump into them, but I'm just conscious of time. So yes, that's our agenda. You may see someone on the channel, on the Zoom, who's our special guest. And Catherine is kindly, I spoke to quite a few people in the last month now from various communities of facilitation and the AJ and Smart community. And what Catherine really represented to me was somebody has tons of experience and has an idea to go somewhere with her next step, but is kind of doing this early stage setup of businesses for herself and trying to like lean into that more. So I think really, from my point of view, she's a great person to bring onto this, to have as the person we can drive this process through and with. So rather than me just telling you what I think you should do, we can actually do this kind of live with Catherine as well and kind of work out where we can help get her into the next step of her business. So yeah, I'll quickly just admit someone, and then Catherine, if you are able to unmute and say hello, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, I can definitely say hello. Yeah, it's great to be here. Looking forward to it.
Great. So I just thought, in the interest of running the process in real time and doing this as we go, I suppose to let everyone know kind of a bit more about you and where you're at, perhaps we could just quickly do some of these points on the webinar now, just the, you know, a bit about you, your backgrounds, where you're trying to get to, etc. Just so we can get a flavour of that, and I can capture some notes and post-its as we go through, and then that'll help inform every exercise going forward.
Oh, sure. Yeah, so I'm Catherine Daly. I'm based in the UK. And unlike Chris, I have another decade of working life experience. So I've been in the workplace for 30 years and along the way done various things. And one way maybe to describe my career is as a squiggly career, that it's gone off in different ways at different times because different things have happened in my life. But it began quite traditionally. I went to university, I studied design, I worked in design as a product, but with a product manager perspective in the chemicals and textile fiber industry. So that's where I cut my teeth. And actually my first role, I didn't realize it 30 years ago, but I was actually a UX designer. I worked on a CAD project, and my role was to interface between designers using the product that we were developing and working with the, at the time, computer scientist who was building the software, it's a CAD system, and the mathematical modeler who was doing all the maths to write so they could write the code to make this system work. So that was my background. And then I continued to work in the textile and fiber and fashion industry until my kids came along. So that was about 8 years. And I had different roles doing different things, working for multinational big corporates. If you've heard of Kimberly-Clark, I worked for them. If you've heard of Akzo Nobel, I worked for them. So that's an example. And then I stopped at 30 and had children. And I didn't want to work globally and travel internationally, which had been my life up until that point. So I kind of paused and had 3 kids and was a mum to them, and did that. But I also set up my own business whilst I was doing that and worked from home, and never made much money, but I enjoyed the challenge of starting up something from scratch, completely novel. And all the things I learned, all the things that are then involved in running a business, and some things I'm really great at and other things I'm super rubbish at, and I'm still learning how to do those, which is partly why I'm here. One of them is marketing and selling myself. I can do it for others, do it for me. So my kids, I ran this bespoke gift company for a while, and then discovered that you also have to have your whole heart in your business. Otherwise, it's really, really hard. It's hard enough work running your own business, but if your heart's not in it, you've got to stop. And that's what happened for me. I fell out of love with what I was doing. And it took me a while to extract myself from that place, but I did. And along, I had a bit of a midlife reassessment that went on as my kids got older. And I went, I need to look at myself, look at what I'm doing. How can I do things that are more fulfilling? And began both the personal and professional evolution, which became ever more people-based. And along the way, I trained as a coach, I trained as a facilitator, I also trained as a body worker. If you've heard of craniosacral therapy, I also trained in that along the way, just to fit in mainly with raising my kids and being available as a mum, but also wanting to be a professional. So I did that part-time. So, but great insight, people and how people work and how interesting people are. And if you get people along, the great things happen. And more latterly, as my kids have got older, I've got more out into the workplace. I worked on a project in a software house. It was a side project with the CEO there, who wanted to develop a way of...
bullies.
Bullies, lo sé.
Which was basically about communication. How do we talk better together at work? And that became, it's now a foundation. It's called Better Conversations.Foundation. That was a project that I developed and helped it off the ground. And then I came and along the way trained as a facilitator, but not in workshop facilitation, but in another process that probably none of you have heard of. It's like the world's best kept secret, which is called systemic modeling. And it helped me develop and understand how to facilitate people on a completely different level. Really loved the work. However, selling that skill set is really, really difficult. And the community that teach it are really rubbish at selling it too. So there was no kind of business support in terms of how do we sell this thing. So I've got this amazing skill that I can do, but I can't get it out into the world very well without support. And then I came across Workshop a Master just earlier this year and went, oh, this really makes sense to me. This is a process. It's much, much easier to sell a process. And really loved all the approaches, the things that it does, the ethos behind it. So, and it marries really well with what I'm doing. And so that's kind of, I'm trying to keep that as brief as possible, given I'm trying to give a précis of 30 years. That's me in a little bit of a nutshell. So I've gone from manufacturing, getting stuff through a big manufacturing system on a global basis through to how do people work better together.
That's a really great
Anything
insight.
else, Chris, you want me to mention? And
No,
that my
great.
passion comes in.
That's great. No, I think the most important thing now is kind of where do you want to be in the future? Because I suppose that's a really great background. I think everyone can probably relate to the fact, you know, you've got that wealth of experience, but how do you transition that into then business, selling the work that you want to do next? You know, what's your next plan for like the future? You know, where do you want to be, I guess, is the next big question, really.
Yeah. So probably like lots of people here, you realize that facilitation and workshopping and all the things that we can do as facilitators, you can deploy in all kinds of areas. It's like we're not short of opportunities. It's just choosing where. And the thing that's become ever clearer for me, and very much more so recently, is that I really care about the climate and the world that we live in right now. And I had this question that I've had in my mind for quite some time, saying, what difference can I make? Given the skills I've got and wanting to make a difference, what can I do? And that now turns up as I want to work in carbon removal and capture. I want to work with innovators, people who are starting up to get more capture more carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and get it in the ground or in the sea in a durable way so we can get to net zero and beyond, and have a planet that is going to be pleasant to live on for many, many, many more years. So that is where I want to work now. I want to work with those kinds of people, those founders who are in those early startup phases, to help them get their businesses up and running so they can make a difference much more quickly. because it's really important. So it's really very much purpose driven for me now, and it really makes sense to me.
That's a great future to be thinking of. It's in many ways I feel like I wish I had more of a grander vision for my future. But yeah, so that's a perfect way to start this. So we have the backgrounds, we have the experience level, we've got whether we have struggled, we have weakness in this, the marketing, sales, and where you want to go to. So that's a really like great and inspirational way to start, actually. So let's see if we can move into the helping the climate in some way with finding your way to market. So yeah, the point here is like, again, most of you, like, you are the business. I imagine in most cases you are the product as well. So what we need to try and do is figure out how can we leverage that, and as Catherine eloquently just did, like the passion behind that as well, because I think that's the thing that people will spot and know, and there's no faking it. Now, I'm not going to like preach about this because I'm sure at least 90-something% of you would have seen Simon's great video about the how, what, and why. And, it's important to know what the purpose is before you do anything else. And I think, what we really know about Apple, of course, the easiest example of all is, yes, they're challenging the status quo. That's a big why. Of course it is for them. But the how actually is quite interesting, because I think a lot of people consider Apple as like inventors of things. Actually, they're more like innovators. So they're actually applying good practices of doing beautiful design, easy to use products into market. They never invented like certain things like the phone or the tablet or, computer. They basically just made better versions that everyone related to. And I think that was a really poignant point here. And I think what we're trying to do is distill that down into like each person on this call and beyond, help them find what they want to do first. Like Catherine, when she told me the first time, I was quite inspired by this. I was like, great, we need to share this message. Because of course, what we do, we help people, we help facilitate, we help do, X, Y, and Z things. Of course we do that. But I think getting to the core of this to translate into the product and to your work, into your product that you're selling, is the thing that connects with people the most to get them on board, because they love to like understand like your story is this. I can relate to that. I will buy from you because I relate to you as a person. So the how, what, and why, of course, I mean, the link I'll share after if people want it, but I'm sure everyone's seen the Simon Sinek thing, of course. So like to really just kick this off, I mean, I put down my examples here just for a quick show and tell, but really what I love doing is this. Like I really just do exist in all my past jobs and my current jobs is like to empower individuals, and then usually most of those individuals work for an organization that makes a better positive change. So that's what I love doing, is helping people. That's my kind of why I get up in the morning, just knowing I can help people then achieve their potential. And then how I do that is a combination of like strategy, the innovation stuff I talked about before, and of course workshops. And that I think is something that is fairly like relatable in the people when they ask you like, well, how do you do this stuff? It's a combination. But then going down the tiers to the what, fundamentally, I build strategies for people, I build teams to deliver them, I build products that innovate companies, and I help build companies, right? Businesses. So it can get really granular, but I think when people sometimes have this challenge, like what do you do for a living, and you have sometimes like a facilitator's background or something like that, it's quite hard to actually get that point across. People just go, I've got it, I love it, I'll hopefully buy it. And I think this is really where we like to start, because without this, it's really hard to actually do anything. You can't forge a product out of something if you don't know yourself. And most importantly, this is a mistake I've made before, is just doing companies for the sake of being like an entrepreneur or a freelancer or whatever. You just build companies to make money. Well, actually, how good would it be to have a company that you actually cared about the purpose of it and it connects with your why? I know it's a privilege to have that, but I feel like if you can, why not? So I've just shared mine very quickly. I guess off the back of what Catherine was saying, I think her why is quite powerful, to say the least. But you mentioned there, Catherine, about carbon neutral and climate change, right? Is kind of your goal, your why, really.
And it's beyond net zero. I don't know how familiar people are with these terms, but basically we need to extract much more carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere than currently is happening naturally, as well as reduce how much we're also putting into it just through business happening, us traveling about, living life, eating food, all of those things.
Yeah, that's great. Which, you'd hope everyone in the world can relate to this, whatever they do for a living, wherever they go, wherever they are, right? It's a human problem to be solved. And then how would you do that then, Catherine? So I mean, I think I sort of specified on my side with a few things, but how would you describe it and your skills?
Well, it's a little similar to yours, actually. And,
Sure.
And it's in the startup place. So the startup arena, you know, I think it's 9 out of 10 startups fail. And it's not
Yeah.
necessarily because they haven't got good ideas. It's just how do they implement them?
Yeah.
And the climate tech space is particularly tricky. It's got numerous kind of hurdles. Not least, there's no direct line to money. Because people aren't having to pay for this. Well, they're kind of paying, but there's all kinds of policy and stuff that sits behind it. So it's quite a tricky space. And not given also that you've got people who aren't used to leading businesses, they've got a great idea. So there's all kinds of process stuff, but also people stuff. And that's what workshopping does. It evolves people's thinking at the same time that they're evolving their product or their service, and the two just seem to go along side by side really beautifully. So that's what I want to do. I want to get in with those teams at that moment where they're having those kinds of conversations about how do we do this, how do we do this stuff better, how do we do it quickly at scale, all those kinds of conversations. Workshopping makes perfect sense to help them do that better.
Right. Love that. Yeah, the process thing I imagine is quite a big deal for this because of the amount of legislation I'm sure around the world is coming in.
Yeah.
And in terms of like the more granular, like, you know, in the Apple's case, make computers and stuff, like what the what is also, you know, I feel it's less inspirational, but it's still quite relevant because people sometimes just want to know, if I pay you something, what do I get at the end of that journey with you? So what would be the product or the output you would create, for example, from doing, you know, collaboration process and workshops?
You could almost copy and paste what's in yours, Chris. So it's around strategy, it's around products or services and being really clear what that's like. But there's also the other bit that I really want to do, it's to do with sustainability, is how do, knowing that collaboration and coaching approaches and all those things are really, really useful skills, how can I leave that behind in the team so they also as a culture go, actually, this thing that we're experiencing, we want to do more of this in-house sustainably without having to pay external people to come and do it. So basically, I'd like to make myself redundant from my relationship with these people because they're doing it themselves, or recognize when they need to call in an external facilitator to do something with them because it's that moment in their business evolution that they need it and they can recognize it.
Yeah, I love that. It's definitely a metaphor that I think is used a lot, right? It's like the fitness instructor, isn't it? That you want to make them so fit in that world that actually they're self-sufficient and thereby, in your case, doing good things with business for the world and the environment. So, okay, great. So, I mean, look, in terms of that, you know, the why, carbon neutral, climate change, I mean, that's pretty powerful. How they do that is collaboration, coaching, process and workshopping, and then building the what, building climate strategies, sustainability, I guess strategies, and I guess it's in business. It's because it's in business, isn't it? I suppose you're looking at going in businesses to go, this is how you can be better at the climate prevention, net zero, etc.
I haven't been clear. There's two bits. So I want to do because it relates to supply and demand, because the demand is coming due to legislation. More companies are going to have to do carbon accounting, do carbon. There's been this massive boom in carbon calculations. You may have noticed that, you know, every time you go on social media, there's somebody else offering you somehow to calculate your carbon. It's because of this. How do we become more aware about our carbon footprint? And also because the carbon capture, and it gets very technical and specific what is meant by this term, but carbon capture and carbon removal is such a new arena. People don't know much about it. And so that's the supply. So I want to work with both. So there's also these people in existing organizations who are going, oh, how do we do more of this sensible carbon accounting thing? Alongside the people who are creating the solutions, literally underneath, as we speak, they're evolving.
So this might be a perfect segue then to talk about this, which is kind of like you get how, what, and why. So I think another thing that people really like need to work with and on, I think at times when they're trying to build their proposition, it's just like, what is it that they are selling? And I think we can use lots of things like, you know, like meta things like collaboration and strategy, I suppose. But I guess what we try and do here is look at things like the features are kind of like what you have as your personal experience, you know, if you're the business. And then the benefits will be kind of, you know, what does that person then get at the other side of that? For example, you know, I can code, I can build a website, right? That's the most basic of basic examples. But you touched on a lot of things there around that, you know about how we can manage or at least look at like carbon accounting and things like that. So perhaps would you say the features around this are kind of more like you have this workshopping background, you have this climate knowledge, and then you have other things from your history, other features, and we can draw from that, you know, things that are like your experience that would just stand out. We can capture just, you know, what one per post-it. Doesn't have to be 6, by the way, just, you know, a sample.
So yes, I have some understanding of the carbon market a little bit,
Yeah.
but not a lot. I have some experience of circular design and how that works. So in terms of when you're evolving product, how do you do that with a circular perspective?
Yes. Right.
On the people side, I know how to handle drama when it arises. If there's discord or disagreement in a group, how to dissipate and make good use of that happening, and people build understanding of each other and what's important. So really, it's taken me years to hone that skill. It's most definitely one. And also the ability to go meta and go, look, can you see what I'm doing now? What am I doing that you can learn to do for yourself that you can now implement? So it's not, instead of just being a passive recipient of being workshopped or coached, is turning it into a learning opportunity and going, can you see what I'm doing? What am I not doing? What have you just seen happen here? And using this expression going meta. That's something else I can do.
Teaching is kind of like a fair one.
It's live in the moment. It's not like some theoretical.
Live teaching, okay.
On right now.
Teaching me, going meta. Okay, got it.
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
What else? Anything else? Do you want another one? Oh my goodness.
We'll do one more. You have to do 6. It's just, it's just.
The other thing I've got is I've spent quite a bit of time more recently in the neurodivergent space. So people who are in the workplace with autism, ADHD, dyslexia, dyscalculia. I can't even say that one. There's something about where you've got struggle with numbers. And so it's like a D, E, and I thing, but more for hidden disabilities. And also it's absolutely critical that we need divergent thinking in order to solve these big problems. So I also have an awareness and a knowledge of how to include divergent thinking.
Okay, got it.
In a safe way, because there's lots of people who are very sensitive about their diagnosis or not having a diagnosis, talking about it in the workplace, because there's a lot of prejudice. So knowing all about that.
Love that. It's a very human-centered approach.
Very human-centered.
Love it. I mean, this is great. I mean, this is so far different to what I do as such. So it's really great to have that as a way to go into this exercise. So really, like, these things are great as this is your experience. Now, the benefits of this, the thing that then the client would then get at the other side of this, off the back of this. So if I hired you to come into my, I don't know, energy company, hypothetically, it's more like, then what benefits will I get? These are like tangible things. So, you know, it could be, for example, like using your, you know, circular design, for example, you could create a visual thing for them as an example. Like, what would that be? So we're trying to hone down what the benefits are, and you'll see why afterwards, because these benefits are important for later for addressing to the target audience's challenges. So hopefully we can pair your benefits with their challenges, thereby creating a solution which becomes a product.
So in terms of circular design, it's seeing the bigger picture and going, and unintended consequences might be a difficult topic to look at because people don't want to have to look beyond. However, if you take a circular design perspective and you go, okay, it might not work so well as an energy company as an example, but say like, because I've got a background in textiles and fashion, I just sell my my products, I go, well, what happens if they come back to you? If at the end of use, everybody returns them directly to you and they become your problem, or they become materials for your next innovation, what would that be like? Rather than it's just out of mind.
Okay.
So it's the kind of taking responsibility for the whole. They're not necessarily going to see that as a benefit, but
is it then about
that?
Yeah, is it then more about like preventing wastage in the business, for example? Is that what you're thinking, or loss of something? Because I think that's something else that is a tangible benefit. If you can say my output will help you,
It's kind of mindset thing going, if every material that I put into this product is a valuable material and it comes back to me, it's that mindset that I want to have it come back to me because I value it, because it means I don't have to buy more of it. I've just got it coming back to me.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Got it.
So Apple do it with that they've got this thing now that they encourage you to they pay you even to take your old devices back to them, because they're deconstructing them and using them either in new devices, or I think they're building roads somewhere with old bits of phone somewhere.
Very commendable by Apple. And okay, great. So it's kind of like helping to drive the company culture a little bit with the right kind of thinking around the climate as well, sustainability space. And then some of the other points, I guess, some people, like people management, is I guess has its own benefits, right, in terms of how you can deal with.
It makes people more confident.
Yeah.
It enables more diverse thinking. It makes it a safer culture. So there's quite a lot talk about psychological safety. And that will permeate. People will want to come and work for a company that people talk about in warm terms. So in terms of, you're going to attract more people because of how you are and how you treat your people.
A really good one. Yeah. And some of these words I'm freestyling typing, I know there's going to be lots of spelling mistakes, so don't judge me too harshly. That's great. That's a great one. Attraction and retention of talent as well, I suppose, is probably part of that. If that's a policy that is then publicly made, I think that attracts more talent to that company, that they are catering and doing these things, especially in terms of like protection of people and protection of the environment. What better companies, can they do, attraction of talent. Okay, perfect. Talent retention. Great. And I'll ask one more, but it's not mandatory. If there's anything else, retraction. Is there a sixth one on this, or should we move on?
One just came to mind and left my head. Sorry. Give me a minute. I'll see if I can. No, it's okay. It's gone.
No, it's okay. And then I think also, I'm going to put one out there just for you and see what you think, because you're talking about all these things like people management, diversity, things that like people skills that look great for companies to retain and hire talent. You're talking about the mindset shift and the policies put into place to help companies do better things with their business, right? So even that in itself, I suppose, has a level of success for them where you'd imagine it would probably get them more sales or more better brand, for example, if they are pushing that as a policy. Is that safe to say? I'm just, assuming here.
My experience, and it's an evolving space, but much it links back to talent as well. People are getting more demanding. I don't want to just earn money. If I'm going to earn money, I want to do it with purpose. I want to make a difference. And I think there's more consumers going, if I buy this thing, I want to know that it's going to make, it's not damaging the world. So I think customer loyalty, you're going to get new customers going, yes, I'd rather go with you. I use myself as an example. I buy higher priced jeans from a sustainable eco denim company because I know good things happen and I wear a lot of jeans.
I love this. I'm actually going to get a few more because I'm just checking out the channel, which is the chat, which is got on fire with comments and ideas. So it's very, very helpful. Thank you, everyone on the chat. Great. Okay, so look, there's a bunch of stuff there already, which is perfect. So already the benefits are starting to come out, and this is obviously people pay for you to come into their company, and to do your work. Already you can see things that are starting to come out on the other side. So it's already a great, clear, investment really in their own business. So we'll keep them there for the moment. What I want to do now is kind of like just talk a bit about like then, you know, we just talked about your experience and what you offer companies for, you know, their investment in you. Let's talk a bit about like who are the people then you want to target with this, because this I think is equally as important. So you can pair off what you're doing with the right audience. Otherwise, you're kind of just hoping for the best. I'm going to see if I can zoom in on this because I appreciate it might be quite small for people. So what I like to do, just for everyone obviously watching as well, is it's not necessarily about knowing the exact, you know, the company name per se. Like I want to go and, I don't know, beat Shell or BP into submission to make them more environmentally conscious. But it's like, what kind of, like, you know, what is there an industry? Is there I mean, it can be a company, but, you know, is it a type of business? Is it a size of business? And really all we're doing here is capturing like anything that comes to mind. It can be like 5, 6, 10, whatever. We'll filter them later. But, you know, is there a size or a shape or a type of business you're looking at?
It depends whether I'm looking at the kind of supply side or the demand side. So looking at the supply side, which is the kind of carbon capture startup space. Sorry, Siri just keeps hopping in on my conversation. And I'm literally just looking at this now, is where do these founders and startups hang out? And they're in incubators and accelerators, and they're possibly venture capitalists as well. So they might be the ones holding the money. And I'm not clear. This is the next bit of I need to find out. Yes, VCs, incubators, accelerators. I've got the names of some of those that I'm just going where there's Techstars and there's and as a general size as well, would you say larger companies as well? Because I guess the larger they are, in theory, the more impact they would have on a greater scale if they're deploying your work, right, to help them be more carbon efficient. Yes, so they're the ones who might have legislation coming down the track going, you need to do more carbon awareness and ESG kind of stuff. Then literally right now the legislation in the UK is very specific that if you've got more than 500 employees, you're a listed company, you need to be doing this thing. And actually they probably should be doing it by now. But there's the next tranche coming through by 2025, who are non-listed but also 500 plus employees and turning over more than 500 million. So that narrows them down a little bit. And so that's who I'd be going and looking at, going, who are you? So they could be retailers, they could be, that kind of space. And I'd probably look more at product and manufacturing space, just because that's my background rather than services.
Sounds good. And is there a particular, I don't know, industry or anything like that maybe that springs to mind?
It makes sense. I'd go down the fashion route because that's my background. I feel quite comfortable in that space.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. Textiles, etc. Sounds good. Okay, and any more or all good? It really is more an exercise, just what comes out your head immediately.
Kind of, but let's stop me there because I am ADHD, just to let you know. So I get too many choices. I then can't decide what to do.
We'll move fast. Crack on. So let's talk about the 6 you've got then. So if we want to just home it down to like 3. You know, I'd probably argue like founders, incubators are kind of in the same space to a degree. They sort of live in the same space. Is there any 3 that stand out as like these are the 3 I must go and, you know, start talking with to learn more, like you're saying, just to get more information back?
So I'm in the incubator space right now because they're the ones where the founders hang. Trying to track down founders is difficult because they're just like small groups in universities or in their back bedroom doing stuff. At least the incubators and the accelerators are actively trying to talk to these people and encourage them to come out in the world and share what they're doing. So they have a location, they have a presence, and they're all on LinkedIn, thankfully.
Okay, perfect. And then would you say then perhaps I mean, I assume that enterprise might be quite a large target here because they've got the legislations coming in that you mentioned, they're going to naturally have to do something by law. And then possibly fashion. I'm just
Fashion, yeah, that would be
because you have the
Monique's obvious
background.
place, because I've still got
Yeah.
links in the industry there. I can go tap those, or I have been tapping those.
Okay. So just to kind of like go through, yes, we've got kind of like rapid fire brainstorm things. Who are the 3 that you want to target? And I suppose what we want to try and just quickly do is just figure out like what are the kind of challenges they're facing, essentially, to see what the pattern might be between them all. So, for example, if they have, no education in this space to do it, or they have no policy in place to tackle this new legislation, for example, what I've tried to do is break it down to like 3 rows. So, from an incubator point of view, or founders, would the challenge be, what would be their challenge, do you think, in light of your services?
I can't answer the thing about incubators because I don't know enough about them as organizations. So this is where who owns them, who's got the money, who's got the relationship. Is this a complex sale piece comes in? So I've got a question mark there. I need to do more research. I don't know.
Totally fine, yeah. Because who's got the money? Yeah, because these things are this kind of thing is meant to be then like you can capture and go away and go, well, what are the questions I need to go and figure out? Because if you're still new to this, you will need to like map this yourself as you go over time. So we'll have to go in terms of one of them that we do want to, for the sake of time, I guess would enterprise be an obvious one to go down this journey with, just because we know they have money, but they have legislation coming in to make them do this carbon neutral stuff going forward. Is this an obvious one to pan out with challenges?
Yeah, I think so. And because they'll be experiencing a culture shift as well, quite possibly. So there's going to be some people change. How do they talk about it? They might be facing some existential problems going, oh, actually, we make something that's really, really bad for the environment. We've built our whole history based on this thing. How else can we do work as that, it could be really difficult for them.
Yeah, it makes sense.
That's not to say with all the people they've got, they can't find a new solution. So that's quite a big strategic problem they might have. Or it could be much smaller, just going, how do we make a bit more of a difference? How do we actually properly understand, if we're going to do things creatively, how we build our carbon strategy? What would that be like?
Yes, that carbon strategy, of course. And then, okay, great. Any more? So cultural shift, communications, changing products potentially, the whole carbon strategy. I mean, they're pretty full, massive things they might have to deal with. I suppose, like, I don't know if legally is too far down legal route for you, but would legal be a thing on this as well? Like, by law, they have to do certain things in their business?
Yeah. And actually, the given the size of these organizations, the fines aren't that massive. So you would hope that it's between £2,000 and £50,000. So the need to do this stuff is, if you're turning over 500 million or more, it's, you go, I'll just take the fine, thank you very much. So I think there needs to be another piece around, actually, you need to do it because it's good.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. So I'm just taking some.
So that's kind of a cultural mindset piece.
The cultural shift. Okay. Yeah. So we'll stick to those for now, for the 4. Okay. So for now, we'll just go with this. I mean, I guess the premise of this is not to answer every question on this call because we'll be here for a while. But just get the.
We've got 10 minutes left, Chris.
And
yeah.
Yeah.
I need to leave on the button. Sorry. Just to let
That's
you know.
okay. 10 minutes is fine. So what we'll do now quickly, I mean, I can quickly just do this. Let's grab all these. Because believe it or not, we have other things that are not necessarily me grilling you for questions, Catherine. Don't worry, it's fine. So really, the point of this is then to go, okay, we have this like challenge flow here to go through, like for the larger enterprise. The goal here really is like, then how do we then pair what you have as benefits, say, to that or to this challenge? So for example, you're talking about like cultural shift, for example. Like, would this be then, for example, train staff to be more confident, for example? And also where you've got company mindset and education. I guess these things play into the first challenge, for example. I think is that fair to say? Because I think what I'm trying to do is pair the two together and say you have something that services the need of the challenge.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah.
Okay, so we can do that for cultural shift. And then I guess like things around risk management, for example, what I'll probably just do is just pair this to this here. Around, you're talking about products, like how we make the products more eco-friendly, etc. during the time that we have.
Manage our pensions. Who do we get our funding from? Might our consumers suddenly do a search on us and discover that our bank is still affiliated with fossil fuels?
Oh, it's all right.
So
Yeah.
all kinds of bits of the risk to the business is, you know, in all your activities, all your suppliers and products that you sell, you can look at the risks associated with the climate.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay. So what essentially we can try and do then, again, just because of, you know, we're trying to cram a long daily process into what, an hour, less than an hour. So we can pair some of these together. And then what I can do quickly then for the benefit of the team on the call is, if we take those benefits that we paired, the way in which we'd usually run this beyond now identify what Catherine's like benefits are to the challenges. So already there's a value there because we know the client will buy her expertise to help their company. We'd look at that and go, okay, so what's next is like, is there a common thread in the challenges, for example? So for example, if all three of our target markets had similar problems or challenges, and I think actually listening to you, Catherine, is that all of them would have the same problem around, where was it? The shift in the legislation you were saying that's coming up in terms of I know it's UK centric, but it must be everywhere in the world, I'd imagine. So for example,
Yes.
yeah. So Catherine, you go.
Oh, sorry, what was the question? I was just agreeing with you.
No, so what I'm doing is it's the classic workshop of speed up moment. So what I'll do is in this, for example, if we were to just say for the benefit of a call today, UK legislation is like a common challenge that every one of your target audiences will have, because they're all going to have to build stuff and make stuff according to that, essentially. So I think that's like one of the key things that we would do as a challenge for everyone. And then really, I guess, to kind of speed through to get to the point I was wanting to really home in on was then like the benefits that you've created before. Is there like steps to that in how you implement them in the company? So the idea being is, if one of your benefits, for example, I'll just grab one, is I don't know, risk management. Put this in here, risk management. Is there a step or steps you've derived? So like first one would be, let's just say, a workshop. Second one might be produce a policy. Next one might be, do you have like a process that you walk through essentially with them, just to help them like get the outcomes that you want?
So you are, I'm on the edge of what's capable here. So I imagine, so this is a little bit of me doing my best right now, is that there would be risk assessments across your entire business. So given that it's quite sizable, that in itself would bring up some things. And then there's, so it'd be like a company-wide risk assessment.
Yeah.
And then looking at the implications of that and what are the opportunities.
Yeah.
And then addressing those, and have we got the resources to do that? And what happens if we don't do them? What's the implication? Yeah. And then the implementation of that, and then the checking in. So if you're kind of taking a lean or an agile perspective, you just do a bit, see what it's like, check in. You know, I would bring that. That's my natural way of doing things, rather than going, here's your 5-year plan, implement it, everything will be perfect. You know, in the real world, we just do a bit, find out what goes on, go back, check. And then also just see where else you sort of sample, because it's a system, you'd sample a bit more widely and go, well, what are your customers now saying about you? What are your suppliers now saying about you? Have your supply chains changed as a result of you changing your policies?
Yes.
What surprising things have happened? What hasn't happened that you thought you would have? So a kind of wider look at that idea of going meta would be turning up here again.
Yeah. Okay, great. So essentially, I mean, ultimately, I think what you're saying is rather than building just the plan, the roadmap of how to then start to, address the company-wide problems, you would then obviously look at breaking down that into chunks essentially for the business itself. So, for example, you look at like the prioritization of it, addressing that, then how we do that in like agile chunks, and then obviously from there, what's the changes we need to make as a company over time. So, and the reason I'm doing this as a step-by-step is, if that is a visualized piece, that could be like the thing that you would sell to companies to say, this is like the process that Catherine runs in an engagement, for example, to give them a really clear understanding of them how their investment works with you. And I think, just to kind of keep things moving swiftly because of the time, the reason I'm trying to get through all these things quickly, and for the benefit of people on this, is I think if you're going to look at packaging and selling what you do as a product, like think of it as a sales deck or investment deck type of approach. It's kind of looking at like all the challenges that you know to be true for that particular client. So we talked about up here, for example, framing that inside the deck so it gives them a sense that they know what's going on, what the challenges are. Then you talk about obviously like the benefits that you've identified of yourself, which then obviously leans into their problems and solves them as a solution, basically. And then really like the feature parts of it that we talked about at the start, like what was Catherine's, experience and features kind of up here. These kind of things are all just there to show the client that you know what you're talking about, and you've got that kind of extra layer of trust. So really what I'm saying is, in the kind of a summarized version, is them together can then formulate what is then a product. And it doesn't have to be a physical product like, this, but it can be the product you sell on a deck or whatever. And that's just like something you can name, shape, and price, essentially. So in a way, like an innovation sprint like I sell, or a design sprint that I'm sure you've all done before, most people on this call. So the idea being is like the process that we just kind of rapidly ran through, and I appreciate it's fairly rushed, is to get to this point where you can then essentially formulate a product, and then you have that in your arsenal to kind of go into clients and start to talk to them in a much more like clearer manner than just saying I do workshops or I do XYZ. It's like I sell this, it has a value of that.
So
and I managed to get that in.
Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry, Catherine.
Strategy sprint, for instance.
Exactly. But it's like you can then build it around you and what you do exactly. So it's then, and if it's even more, if it's around a niche you work in. I've not heard of like a climate sprint, for example, in my life yet. So these are things that you can take with you as like, I guess, IP or process to help amplify your selling to markets. And I'll pause there because I know, Catherine, you're tight in time. That's the only questions I have for you on this. I just want to kind of race through to start to demo how we do this as a collective. I think I've seen people say, can we get this Miro, etc. Later? Of course, yes, we'll get this shared. But most importantly, the selling and the pricing of them. So Catherine's got her climate tech super sprint that everyone wants to buy. It's like, how are we going to price that as a product? And what's that kind of first step looking like? And without going into like modeling and extreme, numbers, I think the various ways to look at this is, do you understand, do you know what your minimum cost is for you just to run anything for somebody? So if it's a week engagement, what will be your minimum cost for you as a person or as a business to operate that and make sure you've got your stuff covered? And that's fine, because at that early stage when you're beginning as a company, the outcomes you get from that might not be financially lucrative, but actually they might be more useful than you think by getting referrals, testimonials, pictures, experience, all that good stuff that you need when you're starting out as a business. The level up from that then is to go, I'm working 5 days with this client. I want a day rate of, X, which is like 2-3 times more your operating cost. That's just generally how agencies do it, right? So it's like your standard middle range, and that's fine because it's time and it works. It's easy. I guess the main thing though is like, and this is why I talk about the product at the end, is if you can forge a product that has outcomes as a value, then really it's about how you position that product and what it does versus just you selling your time. And by that I mean you can sell something that has a much higher value for you as a business by saying, by doing my Catherine super sprint trademark, whatever, it's this weekly process, it's £10,000, for example, because that creates really significant outcomes to help your business stay carbon, neutral, net zero ahead of the big legislation coming. So really like leveling those up is kind of like the idea here, but start small, grow into it essentially once you have your products in place. And Catherine, I know you've just hit half.
I'm sorry, I have to go. I'm hosting another.
Thank you for demoing and being the person on the demo. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Great to see you all. Thanks so much. Bye.
Take care. And as Catherine leaves and there's a sunset, most people have seen this before, right? The value ladder. So for me, this is like a big part of what we've been talking about is start small, win trust, win business early, but like maybe with less profitable value to it. But the idea being is that once you start free, you can then move up the ladder to do other things with the client. So by doing that, and this is how I've always done it, it's been the best way to keep long-term clients for long periods of time, which generates more revenue than just one up front. And the point here is like, yeah, nothing's for free, because you always get something out the back of it. Again, testimonials, photos, experience. And then some people have asked me quite a lot when I've spoken to them about this, like, what can you do to even just get into the front door of clients and speak to them about delivering a service to them? And usually what I find is like some of the time they lean into the idea of like a first-time client offer, of course, like with the discounts, or if you have the trust with them that you can be open and say, I'm testing a new product, a new service, you can have it as a discounted rate whilst I trial it. And then again, some people I've worked with quite a lot have things like referral schemes to drive organic sales. But the point of all this is like always make sure the client is aware of what the value is that you want it to be. So if it's £5,000, dollars, etc., generally you give it to them for half the price. Make sure they're aware of that, so you understand the sizable discount they're getting. So I think that's also a way in to go that they are getting something special from you, and you are doing them essentially a professional favor to get your service into their business. And then look, final thoughts to wrap up, because I know we're kind of hitting the deadline here on past. Talked about all the things here quickly, but I guess the main thing really on all of this is just to make sure that you know what you want to do first of all, like what do you want to do, like as a person. But like I said earlier, I create companies for the sake of creating them rather than doing what I love doing. And I think that's a big mistake in hindsight. So once you know that and you run this kind of process to find your why and how it relates to the market, that's a big help. Make sure you always get the value from an engagement, even if it's free. Just talked about that. So, every engagement doesn't have to be monetary based. I know it should be for most people, but that's how you can launch a new business where you're just essentially getting new clients, new experience, new testimonials. That's super important alongside getting money from some of them, right? And then being clear what you're selling. So again, that exercise that I was running with Catherine, that'll be in the mirror that I'm sharing with everyone as well. So that will also be on there, how to kind of walk through it step by step to figure it out yourself. And I think also like just to promote your business. I mean, we do have this event, Facilitators Connect, which is literally all about what I've been talking about here, like literally just how to grow your business, how to make it a success, how to get clients. And what I haven't touched on, because there's by no means any time for that, once you've even defined your product and your service and how to sell it, like how to get it into the market and brand and talk outwardly into the market is as important, which I know, for example, we'll have someone speaking at the retreats. So I definitely recommend that is one big add-on to this. And I think that is it in a nutshell, quite a large one. But I'll pause, stop. I've seen loads of questions flying around, and I will pass the mic to Catherine for any questions and feedback.
Okay, maybe let me first paste something in here. So I'm talking about the retreat I'm organizing. We're diving deeper into this topic. And we have a special webinar special tonight, which means I'll paste it here. But it's roughly, if you buy 2 tickets tonight and you get 24 hours of time, you'll get like a second ticket for free. So it's 2 tickets for the price of 3,497. Bye, people. Okay, anyway, that's for my selling point. Just look into it, and maybe we'll go over the questions now. Let's see, I have one here. Question: can part of your why be about helping yourself as well as helping others? It's a question of Matthew.
I would say 100% yes, and that's not to be in any way selfish or anything like that, which I think people can always like lean to, because it's almost like it's like that kind of metaphor of the that the oxygen that comes out from an aeroplane, right? It's like you've got to help yourself first before you can help others. So I feel like don't fall into the trap of doing things just because it's like for everyone else and it makes everyone happy. Again, I've done that with the companies I built around. You got to do it for yourself first, and then from that, I think you will be massively better at whatever you want to do for other people. I think people can spot when you're faking things like that. So yes, I think the answer is definitely do it for yourself first. If it helps the world in a great way, and that's just the added bonus. Yes.
Yeah, I love that.
Yourself.
Yeah. Another one by Matthew, a question and observation. I found startups and small businesses have a money scarcity mindset, and it's very difficult to work through despite the pain point. So crafting one's message around that pain has to be clear and be easy to access. How do we do that as facilitators?
I think if I understand the question correctly, if it's about, well, startups and money, which is always quite a problem to solve, I think you can still do the same proposition that you would do anyway to any size of company with startups. It's just that you need to be conscious that that is one. Why did the different target audiences that you might want to do them more for a way to build your experience and your back catalog of clients, and maybe doing them for like a much more reduced rate, essentially, because I know what you mean. It's very difficult sometimes to get cash from startups because they're quite cash poor, but that's totally fine. I think if you're doing that in line with then looking at other audiences, like maybe small medium businesses, enterprise potentially, if you can get there. But yeah, ultimately I think you need to look at that as what I was saying at the end of the presentation, right? It's get what you can from the startups, because there's lots of them as well, so you can actually find your way. And you'll be surprised, actually, if you do a great job with one startup, you might find others along the journey that get recommended to you, which is something I've experienced quite a lot. So bounce from like a free workshop to lots of paid workshops because they recommended me as a useful person.
Yeah, I found they don't even like to do it for free because they are considering the time that they have to pay their staff for the time they're in there with you.
Yeah, that's a good question as well. And also my counter to all those things is, if we can get to a decision or get to an outcome faster doing this than you doing it internally, that will actually save them money, resource, time, right? Because I know time is obviously the killer, right? And money. So I think it has to be positioned in the way that your outcomes is around, it's an investment in a company, yes, but equally it's about you can get things done faster with them, to get to the place they're trying to get to. It's not a hard sell, but it is one you have to really position well in your deck, your pitch, etc. It's like, I always say when they invest in me doing workshops, for example, it's always an investment, because we're going to cut down the time it takes to get to an outcome by doing what we do together versus just letting it run organically in the company, which could take however long. So yeah, it's a great point, but yeah, that's also how I tackle it as well.
Okay, awesome. Michelle Myers also has a question, but so you are talking about teaching facilitation to this space, and I don't know in what context.
If the context is, do we do workshops and help people and save time, resource, money, etc., and then it's like after that, do we train them in it, for example? I think if that's what the question is.
Maybe Michelle can jump in, because I think she's...
Hi, Chris.
Hi.
Yeah, no, I think when Catherine was talking, she was saying she wanted to make herself obsolete when she went into these organizations. That was like one of her wishes for the outcome. And you kind of get that you want organizations to kind of embody this process. So yeah. I guess I was just curious if in your work, if it's something, my question was about Catherine, but yeah, if you could address that would be great. Very appreciated.
Yeah, for sure. And I think for me, it's agnostic to industry, because if you can go into a company, make a telling difference doing your service as a consultant or something like that, that's the first step, and that's the win. If you can then be paid to educate them to take it on board and do it themselves later, I can always understand people getting quite skeptical, because you're like, well, I'm doing myself out of work here. But I think, and this is my experience in my world, we've built products and things for people, and then after that, train them in things like doing design sprints and things like that to help optimize their team. But what I did then is unlock a whole other branch of work for us, where they wanted to learn about agile and other things, because they've seen you can be the educator. So I think it is that leap of faith. If you're happy to be an educator and you think you can do that, I would certainly look at it as a product add-on type thing. So they might come to you for one thing, like the AJ and Smart team do it really well, right? They do consulting on one side, but they do also education on the other side. I think it's just a value additive service that works together when it's required. And not every client will always need it, but if they do want both, that gives you even more trust and then obviously more revenue. So yeah, I would certainly, if you're comfortable doing that education piece, have it as a value additive service.
Perfect. Thank you.
Hope that helps. Thanks.
Great. Another question. Matthew, are hard or soft skills easier or better to feature as experience?
It's really hard one to answer this, because my answer actually isn't so much about hard or soft skills. I think it's about the outcomes they create for someone's money or whatever they're giving you for this service. Because I feel like having the hard and soft skills themselves are great features, like I was talking about in the talk. And that's great because that's you. But I think it's framing them in a way that goes, I can then, like Catherine was saying, I can help. She talked about helping people with neurodiversity and things like that. I think there's an outcome there, which is like, I can support people who are X or Y. You know, I think that's the way of looking at it. Not so much about the skill, but more about what does it create for the business. Because really the hard and soft skills, I think there's a time and a place for both of them, right? It's just about where do they sit in this equation. It might be a question you have to ask yourself in the service. I don't know what service you do, but yeah, always try and frame it in terms of outcomes rather than, you know, just the skills itself. If that helps.
Yeah, I pivoted away so hard from my past career that I have nothing but soft skill to lean on for what I am currently now doing as a facilitator. I don't have a design background, so
that's really good feedback. My advice then is, if soft skills is like your lean, stick with that, because that's you, right? You shouldn't force yourself to be something else just to fit a client's persona of you. And I think by doing the soft skills and framing the benefits from them into whatever context you're selling, it's back to that why statement again, isn't it? It's like you're selling the things that matter to people and to you, but just in your way, on your way of working. You know, you're not trying to be some other persona that you think people want you to be. That's getting quite spiritual and deep, but yeah, that's just a second answer to your question.
Good. Then Matthew, again, like you said somewhere non-profit, but I have no idea. Do you still remember?
that was just a suggestion to
sorry.
Environmental nonprofits.
Mark?
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to like I was trying to write into the chat, Matthew, for the question you just asked. You said something about I just have, because you pivoted so hard that you only have soft skills to lean on. And I will be completely honest, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's only soft skills, because people literally buy from you if you solve a problem that they really, really, really feel. And if you then can sell them the process to reach that outcome, to solve that problem, they like, I literally did that one in sales without having any what is it, like portfolio kind of thing. I just showed them, okay, these are the 3 test steps that we're going to do, and then you don't need this and you get that outcome. It's like, okay, and that costs X, are you in? And they're like, yeah, why not? And it's just these two things, and I never thought about like having this and that and all the sales presentation stuff. It's really trusting yourself with the skills, the soft skills that you have, and then creating that like one step after the other. But the beginning, that's the offer that Chris was talking about today. The offer needs to be so good that they literally see that it's so much freaking valuable for them. And this is a trial and error and testing as well. I was trying to put that one into the chat, but I'm lucky to say that one on the
It's very good, Mark.
On the voice.
Yeah, very good. I realized me and Mark came dressed as each other today as well. I've noticed on there. Now I've looked at everyone. That's great. Thank you, Mark.
Awesome. Okay. I think we've gone to the last question now. Like, how do you keep yourself top of mind as you work through the value ladder?
Well, I think being useful is the best way ever. And I think that comes with, I think Mark mentioned it there actually as well. It's like that your products have to be so compelling that they are useful, people buy them. And I think Michelle mentioned before about the education part. Don't be afraid to kind of like expand out and do things for clients in terms of like, and this is quite contentious what I'm about to say, but take it with like a level of like balance. Like, don't be afraid to overshare things or be useful and help them without necessarily having to be like, I'm charging you for every minute of every day, because do you know what I mean? So I think that's the way. Like some of the startups and things I advised on now, I built them with them like years ago. It's not my startup, but like I still advise them and help them because I was so useful to them. And it's just like, it's just a nice way to do good work because they trust you. So I think if like trust is like one of the main ROIs, you know, beyond money and all that good stuff, just work on trust because it's better for you, it's better for the client, it's better for the relationship, it's better work. So yeah, I think that's kind of like my guiding light most of the time, you know. I appreciate money's always a part of things, but beyond that, yeah, go for trust, maximize happiness, minimize sadness.
It's a good to end things.
Like a way to wrap it up. Yeah. Okay.
Well, I had a great time. I learned a lot. I hope you all guys learned a lot too. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Chris? Then
yeah, I mean, I think also thank you for staying with it. I know we overran by quite a bit and it was quite busy to get it done. But again, feel free to connect, reach out, ask questions offline. Like I say, just here to be useful, you know, build trust and be happy. So yeah, reach out if you want anything else beyond this.
Definitely. I'll be working on the video now so I can email it out to you all, and you also get the Miro board. So I get access to everything. Yeah.
Enjoy the Miro.
And hopefully I'll see some of you at the retreat, of course, because we'll be talking more and more about these topics and meet each other with legs in person.
I hope to see everyone at the retreat.
At the retreat in the Netherlands.
One of you.
I'm also going to say the 11th until the 15th of September. Reach out to me if you want to have more information about this. And also Chris. Chris is also coming. So, okay, well.
I'm also coming.
Thank you for coming, for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Take care. Bye.